Okay, so for the longest time, a lot of people have often talked about the existence of aliens and do they exist. And I was watching some of John Michael Gaudier's and Anton Petrov's videos about like some of the science stuff that a lot of people don't really talk about too much. And it really made me start thinking about something. I've been saying for years that I believe aliens do exist on other planets because I think the one thing we underestimate is, what an alien civilization would be like. But at the same time, though, that they're different than us. Maybe there's a civilization out there that doesn't need water, food. They just somehow find a way to get by in their own way because they're all different. Wouldn't be surprising. I mean, we found bacteria on other planets. There's bacteria that can live in space. There's some animals, for example, that we know of where they're, hot-blooded or cold-blooded and vice versa. So, that can go both ways. So why not a civilization on another planet? What's so, hard about that? Well, the problem has always been we just never found one active. But here's something to think about, though. Humans can die. If you look at the decomposition of a body, the genetics go back into the universe, like its physical DNA, its RNA, like from plants, for example. There's an infinite number of strands you could think about. So it got me thinking. Well, what if there was an alien civilization, like take Mars and Venus, for example. Let's say that or even Earth, for example, but just many years ago, there could have been an extinct civilization or animal that went extinct that we know of, like the vampire baboon, for example, if I got that right. And maybe its genetics are somewhere on this planet still, and then we could just find a way to bring it back somehow. It's the fact that we could find genetics in this planet, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a fossil, could be proof. And that's even more bizarre because when you think about it, like think of another planet. If we were to go to another planet and find genetics of like other plants or organisms at one point, maybe they're extinct, sure, but maybe that genetics still exists. And therefore, that would have been proof that that came from somewhere. And that would have to be proof that aliens do exist from that planet, or maybe from another, it traveled somewhere off a meteorite and crash landed into the planet. See, I still think we've proven that aliens do exist with bacteria, because bacteria can travel light years through, like rock hopping, rather, like asteroids, meteorites, and then they crash land on another planet, and then they evolve. You want another good example? Look at your body, for example. There's more unknown bacteria in your body than there is identified. So, like the term more than human, and it's kind of like Daft Punk's song, Bigger, Faster, Stronger. It kind of reminds me of that vibe, where it's like we're proof that we still don't know our own origins. But at the same time, though, we have more questions than we do answers, is the bottom line. So if that is true, and it is, then if it can happen once, it can most certainly happen again. Especially with, genetics being the way they are, and especially with the way the universe is. I mean, everything's made of energy. Energy can't be destroyed. It can only multiply. Again, law of conservation in thermodynamics. The first and second law of thermodynamics. The same number of energy is returned, but at the same time, though, it is always changing into something else. So, it's actually really interesting to think that that even the universe, and even beyond that, accelerates much faster, and everything in space is moving to the point where it's creating cycles. So there has to be life out there somewhere, because depending on where you draw the line, because an alien by definition would just be like an inhabitant from like another world, or like in politics, an alien from a foreign country, for example, another individual from another country. I believe the same thing could be said about life on other planets. If we were to say that like a subatomic particle can technically be, like a cell, for example, could be a living organism because it has like a mitochondria, a cell wall, genetics, what is it, a mitosis, like the mitosis process that it splits in half, gives birth to another individual. It needs stuff to live, like food and water, like the cells in your body, for example. You know, you have the white blood cells, you have the red blood cells. It's an ecosystem of much smaller inhabitants. You got bacteria, viruses, natural. You got, let's see here, all sorts of different possibilities. But that proves that there is definitely something there that we don't see, that is there. Because even in quantum physics, nothing is still something. Measured on the lowest volume to the highest. Micro and macrobiology also states that everything is infinite. Depending on, like, if you can keep finding something that is there before it. Other dimensions suggests that there's more than one way to measure something. Therefore, the longer the distance goes, the coordinate points will be, you know, you'll have a bigger distance to travel. Light years. The fact that the observable universe and everything is still very small compared to what's really out there, is even more proof that we humans have still a long way to go, but we've still came a long way in the last, you know, as long as we've existed, you know. So, if that's true, I don't see why that wouldn't be proof that there's got to be something else out there. I mean, why would the universe just create us and then we're the only civilization, right? I mean, it definitely does, like when you don't really have something to compare it to, you know, anything really can be possible. Because, you know, if we haven't seen an alien civilization, but only based on what people have suggested, then it really does make you wonder, you know, what else is out there? Why they? Where are they? You know, maybe they're smart enough to hide themselves. Because, like some people have said, or like John Gaudier also said before, John Michael Gaudier, we are, you know, maybe they realize that they too need to take caution with what they do, and they're smart enough to hide themselves so that way nobody else can come and find them. Maybe they don't want to be bothered, or maybe they're paranoid. So they took the right idea to take preparations to hide from, like, outsiders. Or maybe they're, you know, they conquer other planets, but they hide and wait. Kind of like the Nedians from, like, Star Ocean 2, for example. If you've ever played that series. Very good example. But it's also worth noting that every species would be different in its sense, that it wouldn't be the same as us. So we would have to just expect them to be as different as possible. And maybe their communication levels would be a lot different than ours. I mean, obviously they'd speak different languages, but what they would do, how they would survive, maybe their engineering and mathematics would be accelerating and influential. Maybe they're trying to figure out why they exist too versus why we exist, you know. It definitely would be a point of interest to really point out to somebody. But I do think that the evidence is right in front of us, and this whole time we still haven't really touched upon it as much as we'd like to. And it really just goes to show you, and that should really scare some people too, is that really is just the world we live in, you know. Everything we think, everything that we know is always either altered or wrong, because to some degree, because, you know, when we really look at what reality is, we're very surprised at what we see and what we don't. And so therefore, it just gives us that sort of comfort knowing that, you know, maybe we don't need to know everything, but for the people that are brave enough to, like, want to venture out there and figure it out, you know, we're going to find a lot of things that we probably didn't even expect. And so I think that's the way the universe really does work, because the answers are right in front of us. But what does it mean, though? So it's something to think about. It's very poetic and mysterious indeed. So, again, subscribe to this channel if you like these kind of videos. I'll be making more. If you have any requests, please let me know.